chromatic concept, they'll play through the chromatic scales starting on F, B flat, and C. And here's where they're playing the bebop scales separately, not within chord changes, but they're just playing them separately to get used to them. Playing the bebop scale starting on the root of each chord in the concert F 12-bar blues, and we're going to review both of the concert F 12-bar blues heads that we've learned. Play through the ascending bebop scale study in eighth notes, which, just to remind you guys, the ascending scale study is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, natural 7, 1, which that 1 will be the downbeat of the next measure, and then just going back down. Odd numbers are ascending, even numbers are descending. It's going to be the opposite in just a second here. There's the assessment. Whoops. There we go. So we're going in the opposite direction now. So starting on 8. So 8, natural 7, flat 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then the downbeat of the next measure is 1. And then the end of 1 is going to be the second note of the scale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, natural 7. And then the downbeat of beat 3 will be the top roots. So high concert F. And we're going to continue to review Alligator Boogaloo and Billy's Bounce. So now we are going to move away from the concert F bebop scale and go back to the concert B flat bebop scale and have them improvise using elements of the bebop scale. So to transition from last week, I'll ask the students to identify which chord exists in the concert B flat 12-bar blues that's not part of the concert F blues as a check for understanding. And the answer, of course, is the 4 chord, which is the E flat chord. And what chord is part of the F blues that's not part of the B flat blues? And the answer is C, which is the 5 chord in the key of F. So we're going to play through the bebop scale studies at least once using the ABA form of head, scale study, or improvisation, and then head out. So we're going to do these studies prefaced by both Freddie Freeloader and Tenor Madness at least once, and then taking both of those heads out. And as a class before the assessment, I'll invite, we'll play the head to Tenor Madness together since that's a trickier head, and then have student volunteers solo using chromatic elements or bebop elements, and then we'll all play Tenor Madness on the way out. So now we're going to do the same thing in the key of F. So after a real long discussion on bebop scales, we're going to review the concept of modes. And I will introduce the students to the phrase, "I don't play like my Aunt Lodi," which that is a acronym, I guess, I don't know if that's the right term, similar to "Every Good Boy Does Fine on the Line," but it represents modes. So the first major mode is Ionian, the second is Dorian, the third is Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Of course, the only ones that are important to us in this curriculum are Ionian, Dorian, Mixolydian, and Aeolian. And I'm going to discuss what the numbers really mean, the second major mode, even though students may already know this because we've really gone in depth into the modes. So the second major mode means that you start on the second pitch of any major scale. So if you have E Dorian, then that means you're playing the major scale of whatever one whole step backwards from E is. So in that case, it would be the same tonality of the D major scale. And the same thing for the sixth pitch of any major scale with Aeolian mode. So B Aeolian is the equivalent of the D major scale in terms of the sharps and flats you play. So now I'm going to have students be assessed by being given a certain list of major keys, and they will be asked to list the tonic for the following modes: Ionian, Dorian, Mixolydian, Aeolian. So in the key of B flat major, which is the first example, The tonic, which I don't know if that's even the right term, it might be root, but the root of the Ionian mode is obviously B flat. The root of the Dorian mode is C, the root of the Mixolydian mode is F, and the root of the Aeolian mode is G. So for the purpose of this is for the students to really see which major scales each of these modes are based off of. So if students see F7 in a chord progression, they can think in terms of the B flat major scale, but just put more emphasis on F, since that would be the root. So now we're going to revisit an older concept from year 2, the C minor blues, and review the chord symbols. And we're going to review what 2 modes are commonly used over minor chords, which are obviously Dorian and Aeolian. That should come to them real naturally. And what pitch is different, what distinguishes Aeolian from Dorian, and that's the 6th note. And review of chord symbols and what or how you can tell if a chord is a minor 7 chord, which it's characterized by either a lowercase letter or a capital letter with a minus sign next to it. And we're going to have the students write out the C minor 12-bar blues with Roman numeral analysis and play through as many C minor blues studies as possible, all the studies from the previous years. Review the heads for the C minor blues, Mr. PC and Equinox, and invite students to improvise using the chord changes for the concert C minor 12-bar blues. Play either Mr. PC or Equinox, improvise 24 bars of the C minor blues, and then take the head out. And then a review of all major concepts for the year for the last 3 weeks of the year. So modes was a heavy concept, chord symbols, the minor scale. The blues scale was not quite as big of a concept in this year, but the bebop scale was certainly a huge part of the curriculum for this 2nd year of jazz improv. And then there's the final assessment. Have an opportunity to retake up to 3 assessments to replace unsatisfactory grades, just because this is more complex material than year 1, which I allowed them to make up 2 assessments. So here's the final year, which is covering a lot of concepts that are covered in early college even, but because these students have 2 years of jazz improvisational study under their belt, I don't think this is level jumping or too difficult for this for students that would already have, for high school age students that would already have 2 years of formal jazz improvisation training. So playing inside chord changes, rhythm changes, which is another common form in jazz, transcriptions, which are written out improvised solos by famous artists or non-famous artists. The 2-5-1 concept, which it's a theory concept common in jazz, which that refers to the Roman numeral analysis, and just review of the 12-bar blues. So we're going to talk about arpeggios here in this first week, what pitches make up an arpeggio, just as some review of chord symbols, and learning the head to take the A train, which is one of the all-time classic jazz standards that every jazz musician should know the chord changes to by heart. So on the board, I'll write the chord symbol for A dominant 7 at the top left side of the board, and the chord symbol for A minor 7 at the top right side of the board, and I'll draw a vertical line down the middle of the board to distinguish between those 2 halves of the board. And to review the concept of modes, I will have students write down the names of the modes under each chord symbol that would be appropriate to play. So on the left side of the board, they should write Mixolydian, and on the right side of the board, they should write Dorian or Aeolian. And just to review that, because this is the first week, we should really write out the pitches that are part of the A Mixolydian, as well as the A Dorian and an Aeolian. And it also wouldn't hurt to discuss which major scales each of those modes is based off of. Students will write the chord symbol for D dominant 7 and D minor 7. And under that chord symbol, they'll list all of the scales which you could play over it, and the answers are right there below. So now, just to ensure understanding of the chords, The students are going to write the ascending arpeggios to the chords of Take the A Train, and they're going to be provided a blank lead sheet or a blank piece of staff paper that has distinct measures and the chord changes under each measure, so the students know what arpeggios to write based on the root of the chord symbol and the chord symbol, if it's a capital letter or a lowercase letter or whatever. So we're going to review dominant 7 versus minor 7 and how to distinguish between these two, because that's the most important skill in this week, because the students have to be able to do that in order to write the arpeggios correctly. So now that the students have written the ascending arpeggios over the chord changes, they're going to play them. I thought it would be important for them to write it out first so they could really understand the theory behind it before playing these arpeggios. So they're going to play the arpeggios in quarter notes so that 1, 3, 5, 7 makes up exactly one measure. Bum, bum, bum. They're bum, 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 bum. So that those 4 pitches will make up one measure. And for the most part, in Take the A Train, every chord lasts about one measure. So that'll work out pretty well. So we're going to learn the head and then play the arpeggios as a class in quarter notes over the chord changes, and then take the head out just to reinforce that ABA concept. And then individually, the students will be assessed on playing the head and then playing this ascending arpeggio study, which they will not have to have memorized. And then take the head out. And now, similar to the structure of previous